Hello and welcome to Byju's IAS. Most of us choose the civil service examination to become the civil servants. Our objectives might be totally different. One might be to serve the country. Two, it might be to reach the power corridors to bring massive reforms in the system. And three is it becomes a stable source of employment opportunities. As it is said, Janani Janma Bhumischa Swarghadapi Gariyasi. Mother and motherland are greater than all heavens. In order for us to serve our country, our motherland, our great India, civil service is one of the ideal platforms. When it comes to civil service, it is not only about hard work, it also requires strategy and smart work as well to help you enable and understand how you can strategize to your civil service journey and reach the doors of Labasna. What we will have is a Target IS 2022 seminar which will be conducted by Mukesh Shah. How do you register? Follow the link given in the description box, given your basic details, and then you would be able to attend this seminar which will give a broader vision of how to strategize the studies for your civil service journey. So let's get started and look into the first question. With reference to dowry, which of the following statements are correct? Dowry Prohibition Act applies to persons of all religions in India. Dowry Prohibition Act prohibits both the giving and receiving of a dowry. Which of the statements are correct? The answer to this is both. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article here makes a mention of dowry. First, let us understand what is the meaning of dowry. When we look into the Dowry Prohibition Act, it says dowry means any property or valuable security given or agreed to be given either directly or indirectly by one party to a marriage to the other party to the marriage. So there are two parties in the marriage, the bride and the bridegroom. So if there is exchange of the property or any valuables either directly or indirectly, that comes under the fold of dowry. Then we have the parents of either party to a marriage or by any other person, which means it can be friends or relatives as well, to either party to the marriage or to any other person or before or any time after the marriage as well in connection with the marriage of the said party, but it does not include dover or mahar in case of persons to whom the Muslim personal law applies. This means it is applicable to the Muslims as well, but an exception in the form of dover or mahar is given for those who are practitioners of the Muslim personal law. Now, if we get back to this option, it says the Dowry Prohibition Act applies to all religions. Yes, it does apply to all religions, irrespective of which religion that person is following at the individual level. Then the Dowry Prohibition Act prohibits both the giving as well as the receiving of the dowry. It is not only the person who is receiving it will be illegal, but even giving it can be illegal as well. In case someone is forcing for the dowry, the same can be reported to the nearby police stations and suitable actions can also be initiated. When it comes to this Dowry Prohibition Act, it is the state government which is the implementing authority. So state government being the implementing authority will appoint what is called as the dowry prohibition officers. Who are these dowry prohibition officers? Basically, they are the ones who will ensure that this act is implemented when it comes to that particular region. There will be a jurisdiction that will be given to them. The state government appoints these officers. Jurisdiction will be defined to them. So in that particular jurisdiction, they would be able to prevent the dowry harassment, and in case of any dowry that does happen, they collect all the evidence to basically ensure the prosecution of that particular offense. So they perform all the functions that is being defined under this particular act. When it comes to the Indian Penal Code, we have some of the sections as well. Apart from the Dowry Prohibition Act, we have one of the sections called as section 304 of B, which speaks about dowry death. Then we have section 406 as well. This is also in reference to dowry. And finally, we have section 498A, which again speaks about the dowry and its repercussions. Now let's look into the next practice question. Which of the following authorities or institutions fall under the definition of public authority in the Right to Information Act? Office of Attorney General, Securities and Exchange Board of India, non-governmental organizations, Office of the Chief Justice of India. The answer to this is 2 and 4 only. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article here makes a mention of RTI. Let us try and understand what is the definition of public authority. When it comes to public authority, we have section 2 of it, which defines who the public authority is, which institution, authority or a body falls under this definition. So we have this authority which has been established by the constitution. If there is an authority, there is an office which is present in the constitution established by the Constitution of India, that will fall under public authority. If there is a law made by the parliament and if it is an authority established by the law or the statute, that will also fall under public authority. Or there is a body that is created by the act of the state legislature, that will also come under public authority. By notification issued or order made by appropriate government, that will also fall under public authority. Or this may also include body owned, controlled or substantially financed, non-government organizations substantially financed. So if you look into this particular statement, it says non-governmental organizations substantially financed by the government. So all non-governmental organizations do not fall under the office of public authority, but instead only those which are financed by the government either directly or indirectly, even if it is to a minuscule level, only such will fall under the public authority, since all the non-governmental organizations do not fall under it. 3 is completely out. Now the second one, it says Securities and Exchange Board of India. We have a law and there was a parliamentary law for the establishment of SEBI, which is why SEBI falls under this public authority. Now if you look into the Office of Chief Justice of India, yes, it does fall into it. That is because the Supreme Court has recently clarified that the Office of Chief Justice of India falls under the definition of public authority. Now one question that you might all be asking is, how is that Office of Attorney General, which is mentioned in the Constitution of India, not included under the public authority? Most of you might go wrong in this as well. That is because we have a Delhi High Court judgment which has clearly said that this Office of Attorney General is not under the public authorities. Ideally, if this judgment was not given by the Delhi High Court, ideally this would have been under the public authority. But since we have the judgment given by the Delhi High Court where it has clarified that the Office of Attorney General does not fall under the public authority. In this Delhi High Court judgment, there are two viewpoints. One was the first judgment given by a single judge. The single judge said that this is an office established by the Constitution of India. That is why it is a public authority. But then this was overturned by the two-judge bench, where this bench said that the Office of the Attorney General will not fall under the definition of public authority. Since the two-judge bench has clarified that the Office of Attorney General does not fall under the public authority, the answer to this would be 2 and 4 only. Now let's look into the next practice question. Consider the following statements. Only elected members of State Legislative Assembly can vote in the Rajya Sabha election. Vacancies that arise due to resignation, death or disqualification are filled up through bypolls, after which those elected serve out the remainder of their predecessor's term. The Rajya Sabha polls have a system of open ballot. Which of the above statements is or correct? The answer to this is 1, 2 and 3. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article here speaks about by-election to the Council of States from West Bengal. Let us try and understand what are these options. When you look into the first option, it says only elected members of the State Legislative Assembly can vote in Rajya Sabha election. Yes, this is a right statement. So those who are nominated, that is the nominated MLAs within a particular state, they would not be able to select or elect or vote when it comes to the Rajya Sabha elections. It is only the elected members of the State Legislative Assembly who can vote in the Rajya Sabha elections. So the first statement is right. Now let's look into the second statement. What is the meaning of the second statement? We know for the fact that the Rajya Sabha MP would be serving an office of 6 years. So what is the office that he would be serving? His tenure would be about 6 years. Let's say in a hypothetical situation that one of the members of the Rajya Sabha, a MP from Rajya Sabha, he passes away, or there is the resignation of the MP, or there is disqualification of this MP. He has already served the 2-year term, but the rest of the term that is left out is about 4 years. So this particular person who is getting elected to the Rajya Sabha will serve only 4 years and not 6 years. So for a particular person who's passed away or he's resigned or his disqualification, the remaining term is what that particular person would be serving. So the second statement is also right. The third statement says Rajya Sabha polls have a system of open ballot. Even this statement is right. What do we mean by it? When it comes to all of us going to the election and voting for our candidate as well as a political party, it is called a secret ballot. But when it comes to the Rajya Sabha polls have a system of open ballot. What does this mean? Let's say I am an MLA. I want to select one of the candidates who's contesting to the Rajya Sabha seats. So what do? I have to select this particular person's name and I have to show this to the party agent of my party. What does this mean? Let's say I am a person from BJP. BJP has been contesting this particular elections Rajya Sabha seat. So what do I have to do? I have to select one of the persons and put this selection and show it to my party agent who is appointed by my party. But if I am showing this to another party member, that means his vote will be declared invalid. So ideally, whether I am a BJP MLA or a Congress MLA or any party MLA, when I am selecting one of the candidates to that particular seat, I have to show it to only my party agent. If a BJP person who is voting for this particular Rajya Sabha seat, if he is showing to a Congress agent, his vote can become invalid. So there is open ballot on one side, but there are also restrictions as well. Why was this introduced? That is because when you look at the past examples, there have been industrialists who have been elected as the members of the Rajya Sabha, but these people have also engaged in corruption as well. They had in fact bribed the MLAs as well. So in order to prevent it, that is why open ballot has come into picture. But what if a person who is from one of the political parties, he is not listened to that political party but voted to another political party's person? Can he be disqualified under anti-defection law? No, says the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court says just like I and you can elect or select a particular person in our elections, so is the MLA. He can vote for any person, but the party here can take the disciplinary action. He will not be disqualified under anti-defection law, but that party member, if he has violated the terms and conditions of the party here can take the disciplinary action against this particular person. Now let's look into the next practice question. Which of the following statements are correct about biotoilets? Biotoilets use anaerobic bacteria for converting human waste to gas. Bacteria can decompose plastic and cloth materials dumped into toilets. Which of the statements are correct? The answer to this is one only. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article here makes a mention of biotoilets. Now let's look into the discussion. When you look into the first option, it says biotoilets use anaerobic bacteria. To confuse you, they might give fungus or any other microorganism, but remember it is anaerobic bacteria. So the first statement is right, but when it comes to the second statement, bacteria cannot decompose plastic or the cloth material. That is why a new alternative has come up, which is called as the automated train toilet sewage disposal system. Because the bacteria cannot decompose the plastic and the cloth material when it is being dumped in the toilet, a new intervention has been taken up by one of the research scholars. It is yet being tested, so once it is tested, we will have an elaborate discussion. So as of now, only thing that you have to remember is with respect to the bio toilet. Now let's look into the next practice question. Both foreign direct investments and foreign institutional investor are related to investments in a country. Which one of the following statements best describes an important difference between the two? FII helps bring better management skills and technology, while FDI only brings in capital. FII helps in increasing capital availability in general, while FDI only targets specific sectors. FDI flows into secondary market while FII targets primary market. FII is considered to be more stable than FDI. Which of the statements correctly describe these two investment plans? The answer to this is FII helps in increasing capital availability in general, while FDI only targets specific sectors. This happens to be a previous year question from the year 2011. Now let's look into the fact of the day. The fact of the day for today's discussion is Umang application. What is this Umang application? The government of India can come up with multiple schemes and programs. It may come up with number of policy initiatives as well. Likewise, we might also have different state governments who come up with different schemes and programs. But how will people know about it? Yes, the government does give ads in the newspaper. It does put it on the social media handles as well. It tries to do it from every provision that it has by using the television, so on and so forth, by ads, so on and so forth. But in spite of it, there might be issues. There might be one area which is missing where all of us would be able to see. So in order to remove this lacune, this deficiency, what has the government done? The government has come up with one application called as Umang. So what does Umang stands for? It stands for Unified Mobile Application for New Age Governance, which means all the programs, the schemes considered by the central government, considered by the state governments in different states may come under one single platform. That single platform is what is called as Umang application. So basically, this is one of the platforms designed by the government of India, where it was unveiled by the Prime Minister in the year 2017, where a single mobile application will provide all the accessible schemes and programs under one single custody. So basically, different types of services initiated by different departments, different programs initiated by different states will all be provided under one single platform. That single platform is what is called as the Umang application. With this, we would be able to understand what are the different types of services given by the government, if there are any blood banks operated by the government, if there are any mandis in and around that particular region, all of it can be accessed under this single application. And now what we have is an integration of one of the applications called as the Map My India into this Umang application. So this happens to be an indigenous company. What has it done? It has developed digital map for the entire country. So if you have to visit a particular place, the Umang app has now integrated as part of the new age governance. It is this that we have to understand in reference to this article. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.